All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. All right, so here's the deal today. We're going to talk about what we're going to field this weekend, but also there's an interesting crosstab that I put up on locals. We'll go over it today a little bit. If you're a local supporter, you got it already. YouTube, I'll send it over in the community for you guys, members on YouTube as well. Although you should be moving over to locals for me. All right. Where this is a big problem. I just cannot believe this isn't a bigger story. This is a huge issue for the right going forward. And Blake Neff over at Turning Point, when we were doing this polling, which started polling immigration questions, and every time we do that, we always look at generational. And he brought up a point, which I've posted and I've tweeted about it before, but we haven't gotten in depth as much as we're going to today. All right. So first and foremost, again, don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, to share them far and wide. Okay. Then we'll talk a little bit about Republican messaging and what Robert Cahaley told Laura Ingraham, which is totally right, that Republican messaging is not getting beyond conservative media spaces. It's just not. All right. And the constant barrage of, and Robert knows because he knows, you'll find out soon, this constant barrage by the media, even though the media isn't trusted anymore, completely one-sided, all to the left, it doesn't matter. It still gets through. It leaves certain bubbles. Whether people choose to believe it or not is one thing, guys, but they think that it pierces enough that, for instance, let me give you a great example. If Democrats take control of the House of Representatives and, God forbid, the Senate, they're going to just move on with all of these impeachments. You may or may not have heard, but over that fake story with the gunboat, they introduced articles of impeachment against Pete Hegseth. Republicans need a way to fight back all year long beyond conservative media. They do. And, Robert, I'll leave it to him because what he said is his, and, it's exactly right. But there's so much more that can be done other than the suggestion he made. He just made a very simple one that's easy for everybody to understand. But Republicans have to learn how to play the game year round all the time. And they don't know how to do that. Also, what we're going to field for this weekend, which we'll look at the 28 nominations, both Democrat and Republican. And we're also going to poll the UAP UFO question that we do. Well, I don't know. I went back to look at last year's, and maybe because of the election, did we not poll the UAP question last year? I think I missed it. I think what happened is we came up on the Christmas poll and I didn't do it. And that means we're missing a year. So it will be interesting to see how much things have shifted. We've been asking this question since, I believe, April of 2018. And things have happened since then, right? We started asking it after the unveil of ATIP, and there's been so much since. And we're going to have some field time before the Christmas poll. So I figured this would be a good time to do it. There's a release of a new documentary that's, making all the buzz and stuff. So, but I don't want to jump ahead of myself. Look what happened with partisan identification overall this month, which I have to go back and retroactively add some. But you're going to see, typically, after a president wins an election, his party will get an identification bump, a party affiliation bump, that lasts about a year or so. In this case with Republicans, it's extended beyond that year. And honestly, we'll see with Joe Biden, theirs came down very quickly. That hasn't happened yet with Republicans. And I mean, this will address some people who are saying, well, it's just a response bias you're getting. It's not a response bias. Like, yes, all of a sudden, the guy who literally authored the methodology to deal with response bias doesn't know how to handle it. Okay. But it's not that, because there are several red flags with response bias that you would see. One is the recalled vote. If you go and look at the recalled vote, it's like flawless to Trump's vote share. The only issue with the recalled vote now, which is what media polls and university polls are doing, is that about 3 to 5% of Kamala Harris's vote in any given time will lie. And let's actually say 2 to 5. And they'll say they prefer not to say, or they voted for somebody else. And you can actually see it in this crosstab we're going to go over here in a bit. But let's first get to the trend, because we know that this is the same representative not the same sample, but the same representative, almost, whatever it may be, 13% in the West, or not the West, the Pacific division, right? 5% in New England. Like, there's nothing crazy that jumps out about the representations in this sample at all from what we see all the time. So with that said, the jump is real. All right. So there was a widening, and this is kind of crazy, but look at how I would have expected a much, much bigger correction. Let's go back to Biden so you can understand what I'm talking about here. By the time May of 2018, and by the way, I have to go and put this all the way back in. We've been doing it. If you guys haven't noticed, just give us some time, but we've been retroactively adding a ton of data over the years to these trackers in the portfolio section of Big Data Poll. Okay. You can go in there. Some are economic. We'll have more economic, by the way. Some are economic, the vast majority, of course, are political trackers. They're all in the portfolio section of Big Data Poll where you can see them. All right. All right. So we have a lot more we have to add back, but you can see in this of May of 2018, this is still under, of course, Donald Trump. Democrats have a slight lead here. This is not voter registration. This is self-identified party affiliation, which is more fluid than registration and typically leads registration trends, or at least long-term does. Excuse me. All right. And let's go fast forward. Here's the election of Joe Biden. He wins the election. Okay. By the time we get to March, April, right? And I thought we did have May. We don't. We jumped to June. Okay. By the time we get to April of 2021, you can see Republican identification takes a real dive. It falls under 30 for the first time in a very long time in our polling. It was under 30 before the Trump era for a while, and they were a defeated party, guys. They were national. They were not a force. They were not a national political force. I am showing this, right? You guys can see this. Yes. Okay, cool. All right. And then it dips back up, but you can see Democrats 37.2 to Republicans 29.5. This is typical in the first quarter, let's say, after a president wins an election. And we're actually in the quarter of him. The Joe Biden's actually in the White House now at this point. We can see that Democrat jumps to a high of 39.4, but at that month, Republican identification already ticked back up, kept coming back up, started to level out some. By May of 2022, what's going on here? We have a massive inflationary crisis, 9% rate of inflation, a 9% inflation rate. And Democrats just self-identified, they bottom out. Republicans actually take a tiny lead for the first time, I believe, ever. I believe May of 22 is the first national Republican identification lead we've ever measured. Now, I'm sure there was one in the Bush era. If we would have been around during the George W. Bush era, I'm sure that we would have definitely seen like an R+1, R+2, maybe upwards of like a R+4. But we've never polled in that era. We were not out with public polling until 2014, which was here and there. That focused on Senate races. And then by 2016, when we did the daily tracking polls, an experiment to show you the impact of response bias on live caller, random digital dial, blah, blah, blah. And we did something different, which was the beginning of internet panel polling. All right. And there are others there's people worth giving credit here, like the Rand Corp. What is it? The USCN Adorns Life or something? I don't remember, but I know that they had done stuff like this in the past. Rand had in 2012 experimented with Xbox users and stuff. It was neat, but the point was to show response bias is an artifact of the poll. So the swings are actual, in large part, not all of them, but big swings in media and university polling are actually artifacts of the polls themselves. Yes, public opinion changes, but guys, the ABC News tracker going into 2016 did not go from Clinton plus 14 to Clinton plus 2 in 9 days. That doesn't happen unless there's like a massive, massive event. We haven't seen one of those in our lifetime. That's BS. Those are response biases and pollsters covering their asses. All right. So we see it by about March of 23, it becomes basically even, and Democrats and Republicans will trade leads for a while. But once we got into 2024, and this is why I told people Donald Trump was like, oh, he was always going to win this election. You could see it in the national mood, and he was going to win. By 2024, Republicans start taking a pretty significant lead. All right, let's go back to, okay, so those are the areas where I have to put stuff into. Yeah, it is. All right, so all of the national polling tracker, we'll get that in there. But I can tell you this, I don't believe that Democrats ever had a lead in the 2024 in partisan identification in our polling all through 2024. It's always been about, R plus a half a point to upwards of R plus a few points, right? That was probably one of the bigger gaps here, 36.8, 33.6. I don't know how anybody could be polling in this environment today and get like a D plus 6, right? Like you look at what? Let's go to Real Clear Politics now. Latest polls. I think we're going to be up there, but others will be as well. If you go to Real Clear Politics, you go to all latest polls, for instance. I don't want to jump on anybody. I want to say, I believe the Marquette poll did it. Remington Research is out. Let's see. They're very close to us. Let's see what they had. If they even put it out. They did not. They didn't even put out their partisan break. I just don't know how Scott Rasmussen gets away with this. And it's RMG, right? Remington and Neapolitan News Service survey, 3,000 registered voters, a table with top lines. That's about it. Like, I just don't know how you get along when you get away with this. I would never do this. You need crosstabs and basic standards of disclosure. So I can't even tell you about that poll. But I mean, if you go to one of the usual suspects, guys, like Morning Consult, you go to Gallup is usually a little R plus, but it wasn't this month, I believe. But Yahoo News is a very serious offender. The Economist and YouGov, I actually have seen them R plus here and there, so I know they are more Republican than they've been in the past. But you'll see like CBS News and others, they'll come out with these D plus 3s, D plus 6s. Guys, that universe does not exist. I can show you the national voter file right now. It's tightened. Democrats in the Trump era have lost about 4 million registrations nationwide. And if they're not gaining in registration, they're sure as hell not gaining in identification. It's just not happening. So I don't know how they get this. You have to fudge it. Or you have to be so bad at your job that you're oversampling increasingly metro, more educated and wealthy areas. Which should jump right out at you. It should be a huge red flag. So this was last month, which is pretty big gap now, 38.1 to 34.8. So let's say it's R plus 3. It's 38.35, right? If we were to round, Real Clear Politics would round it. So interestingly enough, though, we've actually been able to ask those partisans what they identify as. And for a long time, we've done for Republicans, are you America First, or are you a traditional Republican? With independents, it's always good to do this so you know what your independent sample looks like. Again, for those who say, oh, there's response bias and there are liberals packed in the independent sample. In our polling, if you're not lazy, you can actually go in and cross-tabulate that and see it for yourself. That is not the case. However, independent identification does go back and forth from 1 month to another because they are pretty closely associated together. The percentage who say my views align more with the Republican Party versus those who say their views align with the Democratic Party. But we also do ask, of course, maybe they share little in common with either party, or maybe you're equal, right? Now, this question was first asked by us, I believe, in 2020 for the Democratic nomination. And it was to Democrats. Do you align more with like the Bernie Sanders wing, democratic socialism, or would you consider yourself to be a traditional liberal? It doesn't compare apples to apples with what we're doing and have been doing now for a while, enough to start to show a trend. It doesn't compare apples to apples because we never thought to ask Democrats how many of them identify with flat out socialism, right? We never did. And now we are, because it's clear that the Democratic Party is a socialist party. All right. When we ask them about democratic socialism, the only difference in their mind is that democratic socialism has a better brand than socialism. Democratic socialism isn't associated yet with democide. It's associated with European governments. And again, I mean, this is a whole topic for another show, but the only reason, and this is why Republican support for foreign aid and NATO and everyone in its current form is stupid, because you allowed this to happen. They are only able to do this because the United States of America guarantees their defense. They wouldn't be able to live in these kumbaya socialist worlds and utopias where health insurance is free and higher education is free and no one goes hungry and you all retire when you're 50. That wouldn't be possible if the United States of America made France and every other damn country pay for themselves. But here we are. So we have a huge percentage now of Democrats who identify as socialists in one way or the other. We did Republican first, Democratic first, and then you can check out the independent when you're done. I mean, look, the big story is this month, Republicans and Democrats were roughly even. This is why I tell you, honestly, the percentage of truly persuadable people is much, 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 much smaller than we may believe that it to be, or it's often discussed in mainstream media outlets by other, pundits who go on and talk about whatever they talk about. In truth, about a quarter of the independent vote identifies with each party. So about a quarter identifies with Republicans. It's usually 1 in 5 to 1 in 4 identify with Democrats, and it goes back and forth from month to month. Sometimes we'll get to like 30, 33, but it's rare. Another quarter roughly is equally aligned, and then what is left, which is about a third here in this case, and is the largest one, shares little in common with either. These are the ones who are actually persuadable. And that's what we see when we're looking at elections. So we already know what the mood of the election is going to be when you see share little in common with either, with robust vote history, siding with one party repeatedly. That is what happened to Joe Biden in 2020. It was a red flag for Donald Trump. All right, even the Trump voters out there think the election was stolen. Look, I'm actually with you on that, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is there were some very bad trends for Trump. Fast forward to 24, that group went back to Trump and went back to Trump hard. They never left Donald Trump's side. Starting in our polling, when we started to ask about hypothetical matchups in 2022, they had always been with Trump. All right. We'll look and see where they're at now in a bit, but that's where independents, that's obviously what they make up. There are more male independents who identify on the right than female. You can see that here, of course. Nothing is surprising here. Some of these Democratic independents in the sample are a little bit, look, men are part of this problem. And I like those little cute graphics where you see if only white men voted, how would the map look? Well, right. But you can't ignore that white men are increasingly like they're among like the how do you say this? They're among the worst. A white educated beta male is basically the most liberal person in this country. Beyond, and to some extent, like the butchy lesbian that Milo was talking about in his interview with Tucker. And that's true because even some of those butchy lesbians are pissed off at the transgender thing. Like a white beta male, it just wants to please everybody and take no responsibility or no role for anything. They're aberrant, you know? All right. So the big story outside of all that is this. Here it is. So even when weighted, this sample was actually worse raw. But when weighted, 50% of Democrats, obviously we're only looking at a sample of about 700 from the national sample, because that represents the number of Democrats I showed you before in the party affiliation trend. 34.8% of the sample is about 700. All right. About half off the rip identify with democratic socialism. Off the rip. They're already hit the 50. Another 7% of Democrats identify with socialism. They're just open and they just admit it. Right now, you know, that democratic socialism thing is kind of BS. I think we all know that. I'm a socialist because I'm a socialist. That's that voter. The others are like, they think there's something different about it or something, or they bought into the difference in the branding. It's just better retooling and brand. It reminds me of how the word liberal was once the word to use until liberal got a very negative connotation in the 20th century. So they went with what? Progressive, right? And then progressive got a negative connotation. So they went back to liberal and just didn't know where to go with themselves, and have now ended up back on, well, I'm really more of a democratic socialist. Traditional liberalism is dead. Traditional liberals, many of them, if you look at the demographics, I assume probably now vote Republican. And many of the rhinos, by the way, vote Democratic because they, or I would say neocons, neocon rhino types, they now vote Democratic because the truth is a neocon always was a liberal. They were always a domestic liberal, right? They were always a domestic liberal who just wanted to use the primacy of U.S. power to shape the world in their image. And at the time, the Democratic Party became a anti-war party, wanted to try to shift back to being a traditional liberal, and they booted out the nuns. So like Bill Kristol's daddy, the Trotskyite, came to the Republican Party, rebranded themselves as neocons, and the Mark Levins of the world are running around pretending they're the conservative standard bearers, when in truth, they're not at all. Like supporting mass surveillance is not a right-wing position. That is a left-wing position, statist position, to use one of his. 18%. That's it. Traditional liberal. That's it. Look by age. 18 to 29-year-old Democrats, 9.8%. 30 to 34, 10.8. 45 to 64, getting a little bit higher, but 11. Or 30 to 44 is 11, right? 45 to 64, we start to get to 20. And 65 plus, we get to 28. But look at the 65 plus, the senior category of Democrats. A plurality is still socialist. A rather strong plurality. If you break it down by age detail, you can see the even bigger problem that I'm not saying the Democratic Party has. It is a problem for the Democratic Party in the sense for now it is, because the country as a whole, you know, this is still not the route that they really want to go. But look, you give them an answer to paying their utility bills and to be able to afford a car and to pay their mortgage and get a better job or get health care. Health care is huge right now. Republicans better wake up. Health care is a big deal for voters. It's still number 3, but it's a big deal. Anytime healthcare has ever been in the top 3 in our polling on most important issues and the rank distribution, Republicans have lost. So in the short term, this should concern Democrats, and they are. They're having this internal fight right now with the advent of, or the loss, following the loss of Afton Bain in Tennessee 7. They're, actively and openly talking about it. But their problem is that traditional liberalism is dead. All right. If you look by age detail, it's not appealing to anyone young. The future for the Democratic Party is soon too. The very near future is more like a 3/4 socialist party. Look, in what category is identifying as a socialist most likely among Democrats? If you look at the regular age buckets, it's 18 to 29%, 14.5. I'm a straight up socialist and I'm all right with it. 25 to 29 is closer, although still higher than the average of the entire sample. It's a couple of points higher. But look at 18 to 24. 19% flat up socialists, and another half Democratic socialists. So they have a major problem with directionally here with the trend. It's just very similar to the problem that Republicans have when it comes to America First versus traditional Republicans. Traditional Republicans are older, MAGA is younger, and there's just nowhere, like if the party doesn't go in that direction, the party will have major problems winning elections, maybe even ceasing to exist. That still happens. You can't not eventually represent your vote. You'll go the way of the Whigs, the way the Tories are going to go in the UK. Already going. Look by race is pretty interesting too. Let's do it by detail. Non-whites, right? They identify more with some form of socialism or another. That Asian number is particularly interesting to me. But bottom line is, only 21% of whites identify as traditional liberal. This party is a party of socialists. All right, no matter really what color you are. Income and aid or education, excuse me, is also interesting. If you're more educated, you're more fanatical. I mean, overall. But if you have no college degree, you do slightly identify more with straight up socialism, which still does make sense to me because lower income, right? Tougher in life, harder to pay your bills. But among democratic socialism, it's huge. And if you break that down by, let's actually look by degree or not, you'll see it. Look at the 4-year college grads. The only reason why socialism is so low is because they were taught getting that 4-year college degree that democratic socialism is this new form of socialism. Nobody's really a socialist anymore. You're a democratic socialist. It makes you feel better about yourself, you see. 60%. And post-grads, there's less of them, so there should be a little bit more statistical noise here. I think they make up 13% of the entire poll, 55%. So, they are slightly higher as far as whether they identify as a socialist. But again, there's less of them, a lot of noise in a subgroup like that. But you could see it, obviously. And where you have no high school degree or you have a high school degree or less is where the highest form of socialism actually pops up. This is why Bernie... Because if you match this with the 2024 vote, you're going to see something crazy. This is your Bernie Sanders voter. See him? Your once upon a time 2016 Bernie Sanders voter turned populist, still calls himself that kind of a vote, like a Bernie bro, going over and voting for Donald Trump. Now, of course, Kamala Harris won way more socialists, twice the number. But Trump still picked a few of them off, especially if you nest it by college, by education. You'll see that it came from those who had a high school degree or less. That's a vote Republicans will never get. Well, not never, but they're not going to get it now. They're just not even going to vote, those people. All right. So speaking of, unfortunately, it's a lot. Unfortunately, the most radical of Democrats are the most excited, or at least more of them. You can clearly see that, right? If you look at likelihood to vote, you'll see where it all stems from. So this is Republicans. This is your challenge here. If you don't go out to vote, that is who you're allowing to elect your congressman and your senator and anyone else above or below the ballot. You are literally allowing 58% is certain to vote. And that is democratic, socialist, or socialist. That's who you're leaving it up to if you don't get off your ass and cast a vote. And I'm not saying you don't have good reason to be unenthusiastic. I'm not going to have, that's not a debate. Of course you do. But it's also the reality that that's who's going to pick your leaders if you don't get up and vote. It's not good. You can see they're very enthusiastic. They're extremely enthusiastic. They're dying to go out there, guys. So there it is. All right. Probably the most interesting point is this. This is by generation. Are you first generation? Are you a second generation American? Are you a third generation American? Or are you not US born at all? You may notice that there's actually a 0 by socialism in the foreign born. All right. And that's easy. It's because the sample size is small and because everybody else picked democratic socialism. All right. So barely anybody who is a foreign born citizen, only 17% said they're a traditional liberal. 68.5% of foreign born naturalized Democrats are democratic socialists. This is why when you hear Donald Trump say, I'm putting a moratorium on third world immigration, because it does matter what part of the world these people come from that impact their views. So if you were to naturalize a bunch of Venezuelans or South Africans or Western Europeans, they're going to look a lot different. Their opinions are going to be much, much different. But we don't. And we haven't been for a long time. So if you're naturalized, you've been here for, let's say, 10 years or more, right? Where did people come from 10 years or more ago? They're coming from unstable Latin America, left-wing countries. They're coming from Asia. Our trajectory has completely changed from 90s and the immigration we took in the 80s and 90s. Which was certainly, even back then when you brought in Chinese, for instance, we were talking about the Chinese national issue for schools. If we don't bring them in, the school's going to collapse. Oh, well, let it collapse. You're not bringing into Tiananmen Square hating Chinese people now. You're bringing in people who are loyal and think that the Chinese government is a more pragmatic, that's the word you'll always hear them use. It's more pragmatic than the old regime, that they embrace some liberal ideas. Sure. Is that what you want? Tiananmen Square apologists instead of haters? Because that's who's coming in now from that area of the world. All right. If you're first generation, you're still rather up there. 59%, identify as democratic socialism, just under 60. Another 12% identifies straight up as a socialist. It's not that small, guys, of a sample. It's really not. Second generation starts to fall down to 50. Socialism falls to 7.4. By the time we get to third generation American or more, it falls to 47% democratic socialist and 4.7 for socialism. Now, watch this. What's interesting about this? Okay. If we go to independent identification, isn't that crazy? Now, granted, these are a lot more liberal voters, but it is true that Trump just won newly naturalized foreign-born citizens. He just won them in 24. But they are more radical on both sides. And maybe that's the wrong way to put it, because, clearly the Democratic issue is a radical issue. That's not Americanism. So that is radical just based on the American political spectrum that's been around forever. I don't think it's fair to say America First is radical, because America First is actually bringing the Republican Party back to what it used to stand for through most of the 20th century. Right before Reagan and before, there was a Rockefeller period for sure. Certainly before the Second World War, right? The post-World War order. That's what Republicanism was all about: protecting American businesses, promoting the American family, American businesses come first. They're not isolationists, but they're not war whores. So there's a history, at least there. There's no history, okay? There's no history whatsoever of democratic socialism or any form of socialism being a dominant position in any party. There was a period for a while during the Roosevelt era and even before the Roosevelt era where there were small fractions of Jewish voters in places like New York and Pennsylvania who were just flat out socialists, even communists. There was, but it was never a widespread or broadly accepted view. These people became part of a greater coalition. They took whatever they could get, but they were never given the dominance of a party platform. So that's what I mean when I say on the left, it's a trend toward the radical. On the right, it's not. It's a trend toward what it was before globalism poisoned it, right? I guess it's like, I'm trying not to be unfair, but I think that's right. You guys, like, if you're on the left and you're like, oh, screw this guy, where the radical ones. I mean, well, you are. Historically speaking, you are. And let me just show you by Republican what I mean. If you're not U.S. born, actually, this one was a little bit different. Okay, but you could see it in the first generation anyway. Look at how much more America First is among first generation Republicans than everything else. In fact, only when you get to third generation or more can you pull America First below a majority. Second generation, 58%. First generation, 63%. 63% of first generation Republicans are MAGA. And that's going to fuel that number to get worse and worse and worse for traditional Republicans until they're just gone, which is soon. It's going to happen very, very soon. And you can see it by age detail. It's over. This is Dunsky. This trend is done. It's irreversible. And when super seniors leave the electorate, nicely put, it's really a wrap for the rest of that. I mean, you can enjoy the third or roughly third of ID you have right now, but you really don't. Because the truth is, when I lean people, and maybe we need to just start doing that, when we lean the unsure, no opinion, it was a little low this month. It's usually around 20, and MAGA is usually around 55. But when you lean them, they all lean the MAGA anyway. It'll end up with like 63 or 62 to like 30, right? That's just the truth. But these are the two, given these trends, this is the direction the country's going in. And it's unstoppable. There's nothing that can stop it. All right, let's look at religion is also very cool, especially when you look at by Republicans. This happens every single month. Every month. Every religion, except for Mormonism, is more MAGA than traditional Republican. And I know it's a very, very, very small sample of Mormons, but you can track it over time. And if we were to include every survey we've done in the last year, and it adds up to like 250 Mormons, all right, and you from all over the country, everything we've done, you're going to see probably somewhere like 60-30. Not even 60-25, the rest saying they're unsure. And by the way, on the same note, this is why it bothers me when I hear when Republicans get frustrated, a certain part of the Republican Party just immediately starts like targeting Muslims, like all Muslims, right? And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but it's true. They do. And they are going to act and pretend as if Dearborn, Michigan didn't just vote for Donald Trump a freaking year ago. If we were to do the same thing with Muslims that I just said about Mormons, you're going to see Muslims somewhere in the neighborhood of 75-25 MAGA. They are among the most MAGA Republican subgroup. It's every time consistent. Every time. Could be 10, could be 100, could be 1,000. It doesn't matter. If we would add them all up over the last year and we got to like 200 Muslim interviews, it's going to be 75-25. Happens every month. Now, does that mean you should flood the gates with Muslims? No, but it does mean that certain Muslims are more MAGA than white Republicans, than some white Republicans. Find them. They're not, and again, it's like, again, sit there and like light a piece of bacon on fire in the street in Dearborn like you're just being some antagonist prick is stupid. Those people just voted for you. Now, given what's been happening, they're not going to go to the street and stick their necks out when the Muslim Brotherhood organizes a freaking riot in the street, or it's like Palestinian Sympathy Party or something. They're not going to go out there and put their necks out now. Not for you now, especially not with some of you running through the street lighting pork on fire. Like it's ridiculous. Let's cook some bacon in the middle of the road. It's just bad form. In poor taste, as I believe my grandmother used to say. In poor taste, Richard. In poor taste. Sorry, Grandma. All right, let's see where to go from here. I really do want to leave time and play this Robert Cahaly thing and talk about the message and what we're doing. Actually, I wanted to review the last poll that we did about this alien question, right? All right, let me find it. What year is this? This one is 2021. All right, and then I'll show you 22 so we can do the trend a little bit. Yeah, let's do that. Let's bring this back. I do just want to show you Democratic identification, by the way, by religion, which is interesting. I don't think I showed you that. Democrat Mormons are radical. It's true. Jewish Democrats are among like faithful Jewish Democrats, because of course, this is a question about religion, not ethnicity. They are the last, I guess, they're the last bucket of traditional liberalism. And I mean, I don't know how much longer that's going to last. We'll see. But again, this is religious Jews, not ethnic Jews, right? Which I know someone's going to say, you can't separate the two, Rich. Well, they do. So let's just honor what they do and move on, right? All right, so go check out that crosstab. It's pretty cool. In the meantime, I'm going to put another one up here. All right, this is a little history lesson. We're going to take a walk down memory lane. All right, this is March 31st to April 4th, 2021. And since that time, because I could go to the press release sections of Big Data Poll, we can go through, but I think I only put out as a press release the last, is it this year? Let me see. Bear with me. Because I do want to get the 2018 results so we can see how it changes over time. All right. What day is this? April 9th, 2021. So this has got to be the press release about this poll on your screen right now. Yes, it is. All right. I'm going to read it while I put the crosstab up and we go and find it. I'll read what the press release said because it's going to have it's going to have the 2018 trend. All right. And real quick, where are you? Oh, man, this was a big poll. I remember this. This was a cool poll. We did about COVID, transgender issues, filibuster. This is absolutely, I mean, filibuster got crushed in this poll last time, which do you support the plan to abolish the filibuster in the U.S. Senate? This was a Democratic plan at the time. 45% said they opposed, 33% said they supported it, and only 22.5% said they were unsure. I bet that number is smaller now. And I bet you it's completely reversed, right? Republicans and independents were opposing it before. Now, Democrats and independents are going to oppose it now. I guarantee it. But that's the nature of somehow this goes. And let's read the questions really quick so you know what I'm about to read you the results to. Which comes closer to your view on UFO sightings? At least some can be attributed to extraterrestrial intelligence visiting Earth, or all can be explained by human activity or on Earth or natural phenomena. right? At least some can be attributed to extraterrestrial intelligence visiting Earth in April of 2021 was 38%. All right. So, yes, 38.5% believed at least some could be attributed, while 32.4% thought that it's all can be explained away by human activity or natural phenomena. 29% were unsure. However, less than a third, 31.1 and 18, told us that they believed UFO sightings can be attributed, at least some of them, to extraterrestrial intelligence. So you could see that it jumped almost 10 points since that April of 2018 survey. We're going to be late, unfortunately, in the trends. So it's the reason why I can't stand not doing the same month every year is because you get these jagged, crazy trend lines when you do it. The way we're about to do it, it sucks, but it is what it is. We missed last year. All right, so nearly 2 in 10, or 18%, of American voters now claim to have, quote, personally witnessed an unidentified flying object, which was up from 12% 3 years before. 2 in 10, 20% now say they know someone who sincerely believes they've witnessed a UFO, and a significant majority, 58.6%, expressed a belief in intelligent life forms elsewhere in the universe, and 62% said that the U.S. government knows more about UFOs than it claims. All right. Let's go and see what the last one was. I got to go to the database market site here. What was recent used? I should be able to find it under recent use. Of course, I didn't do that. If that's 2021, let's see if 2022 was here. It would have been March, April, or May. So I'd have to go through. Let's go to variables. Give me 1 second, guys. That's cost of living, trust in the feds. Okay, so not in March. What about in May? It may be 23. Yep, there it is, in May. I don't think it went up that much. So let's see if it's in May. If I type in May of 2023, is it going to be here? That's 25. I'll have to swap my screen share in a second to show you guys what the results were. We're going to have to go into the crosstabs. For locals, I think, was the only one who got this, if I remember correctly. This was like a locals exclusive or something. Yeah, it was. Okay. All right, so let me remove this. I remove myself. Yeah, it's a locals exclusive. So let's share the screen. Okay. This is May of 2022. Back in time, baby. Hold on 1 second, guys. Well, it is what it is. For some reason it looks great, right? Oh, it's that time. It's winter, so I like to grow my hair out a little bit long, but it's getting a little crazy. All right, let's go to UFO sightings. I don't think it changed that much. At least, it did. It did. It went up to 42.6%. Ooh, well now, that's a little higher. Let me just make sure I remember UFO sightings. Yes, I've witnessed was 38.5. So it actually rose to 42.6. Was there a decline in the I don't know? No. So that was changing opinions. In 21, 29% said they didn't know. They were unsure. 30% said they were unsure here. So this is actually from all can be explained through human activity, falling from 32.4 to 27.3. Wow. Now I'm really interested to see what we're going to get. Because a lot has happened since then. Barnes and I had to ask it again after the report came out. I want to say this poll when not ATIP. The government released a report. Rubio obviously championed it, Tim Burchett, and it was a result of an act that was passed where they have to stay and report to Congress how many sightings have been studied and how many were attributed to or unexplained, or they know they're UAPs. And that may have been this poll. So if that's the case, maybe that's why it jumps, but we'll see. All right, UFO sightings didn't change all that much. 18.18% said that so 19, it ticked up a point from the prior year. 21.6 said no, but I know someone who sincerely believes. That's a 2-point increase. No, I've never witnessed a UFO, and neither has anyone I know. Fell from 62 to 59. Man, now I'm getting really curious as to what we're going to find here. Belief in intelligent life. Whoa. Went from 58 to 62. What was it in 18? It was like, I don't know, 50% or something. It was low. I remember thinking to myself, that's really low. But it was like half. Now it's almost 2/3, or at least in this poll. And that's up from 58. Okay. No is down to 15, was down to 15, 14.6 from 18. Unsure, 24.3. It was about 23. So that's people changing their minds. That's what's interesting. Still the same percentage who say they're unsure. The difference is in the number of people changing their minds. Do you believe the U.S. government knows more about about UFOs than it claims? Prior to this poll we're looking at right now on the screen was 62%, and it rose to 69.2. I mean, can it get much higher? No fell from 17 to 12.8. So 17 to 13, and unsure fell from 21 to 18. Okay. Ooh, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be really interesting. There it is. All right, let's get the video up. Roll this video real quick. How much higher could it get? Honest to God, how much higher could it get? In all seriousness, I'm not sure. I'm really not. Oh, there it is. Okay. Is it going to blast some ad? Yeah, it's going to blast some ad. Fox News can't kill. Look at that. That's terrible. Sorry. I was going to listen to that for a second. I don't know how much higher that can get. I really don't. I don't know how much higher belief in extraterrestrial life can get, or how much higher. What is interesting is the percentage of people that say they're witnessing things is increasing. We'll see if it continues to increase or not. According to the government, they are increasing sightings. I just don't know where they're getting this information from, so I can't tell you whether or not we can believe it or it's credible. So we'll just have to do it ourselves. We've always done it anyway. Gallup has done this for a while. I don't know when the last time is Gallup did it, but once upon a time, they used to ask it every year too. I don't know. I'll look for it though, and we'll take a peek, and we'll see if we're anywhere near or in the same ballpark. So that'll be this weekend. What's it, 2:54? So I guess we'll get through this video. But yeah, I don't think I have any. Let me see. Let me just peep on locals. Yeah, I got some. Dan, where you been, brother? Thanks for the tip, by the way. I'm going to start giving you late slips for book club, young man. All right. Yeah, I guess I got something to do. But when we're done with this, we'll wrap this video. Just remember, we're not going to get to it. The list will start out long for nominations. I'm going to pick the people who basically are in the RCP average right now. I went over them, and I think there's some people that are probably not worth asking about at all. There will be more people as we get closer to after the midterms. That's when you'll know and you'll see who's starting to gear up to run for president. On the Republican side, people are already doing it, right? Vance is odds on the favorite, has the most support. I want to poll it myself. Rasmussen just did. They got like over 60%. I'm curious to see what we get. We're not normally that high. But DeSantis and Cruz, you can already see them starting to do their thing. Democrats are a little bit more wide open, and there will be a dark horse that comes out of nowhere. So we'll start with the people on the list that RCP has up that other people are asking, and we'll add more people over time, right? That's all we can do. All right, so we'll do that, the UFO thing today. And more in the future, we'll have to talk more about what Haley's talking about here because, man, he's so right. And if Republicans want this coalition after 24, that was like the Roosevelt coalition, could have dominated for 30 years. If they want to do that, they have to start realizing that elections, first of all, Donald Trump cannot save you all the time. He saved Van Epps in Tennessee 7. Sorry, that's what happened. The injection of money and Trump coming out with the moratorium and shining a light on the race saved Van Epps, or at least saved him from a more humiliating margin, which, by the way, Robert's going to talk about in this video. Trump can't do that all the time. You got to learn to feed yourselves. You have to learn to fend for yourselves. You're going to have to learn to fight on your own. It's been a year now since he won election. You should have learned that from the jump. And part of that, if you want to motivate this new coalition of yours, part of that has to come from understanding that you can't just 6 months before the election kick off. It's got to constantly be a thing. Democrats constantly have the media. Democrats constantly have the entertainment industry. Democrats constantly have Apple sending them skewed messages, even about the news, every single day. You cannot swoop in the last 3 to 6 months, send out a few text messages, and think that's sufficient. It's not. You have to build relationships with these voters who really aren't even your voters yet. You have to build those relationships. You have to foster that connection. Build, foster, nurture. It's really not that hard. All right, let's play this clip from what Robert says, which dispels a lot of the coping that you heard from Republicans on the right. You're going to hear Laura try to cope. You're going to hear Laura cope. She's going to do the cope thing. You'll even hear Byron York cope. And Robert just throws a warm slice of humble pie in their face.
That nutty leftist Afton Ben from Tennessee kind of learned the hard way that openly hating the district you want to represent isn't a great strategy after all. So she lost that special election race against Republican Matt Van Epps by 9 points. Somehow that's like a big warning sign for Republicans. It makes no sense. It is a deep red area, and obviously Trump won the district by 22% in 2024. But from what we can gather, people have only been really paying attention to this over the last 10 days or so. And Democrats, yeah, of course, they're totally pumped, and they want to take back the House next year. So they're trying to get out as many people as they could. It doesn't mean Republicans should sit back and relax, rest on their laurels. Obviously not. But it's also not time to push the panic button, as I think John Thune kind of indicated today. Here to discuss all this is Byron York, Fox News contributor, and Robert Cahaly, chief pollster and senior strategist at the Trafalgar Group. Robert, the heads were exploding last night, and early on it seemed, even to yours truly, because I wasn't looking at what precincts were in, that she actually might win, which would not have been good for Republicans. But what does this 9-point victory for Matt Van Epps tell you as a pollster?
Well, the 9-point victory to me is a little more concerning when you look at the fact that Green won by 21 and a half. When Trump was on the ballot, that's one thing. But go back to 2022.
Yep.
He also won by 21 points then. And the fact is, that was an election that was supposedly not a very good election for Republicans. So to me, that causes a lot more concern is comparing it with the 2022 midterms. If that's kind of the high watermark, this is very significant. What the problem I think is a messaging problem. I don't think it's time to panic, but I think it is time to retool.
Wait, I'm going to pause that real quick because that's what it is. So making fun of people and calling them panicans is retarded. Retarded. It isn't a panic to recognize that you have problems and then retool to address those problems. Only stupid people wouldn't do that. Secondly, he made a great point. Van Epps, and he underperformed the historical vote trends of the district. Also, it's also worse than what Robert said for this reason, because in truth, Tennessee is among the top handful of states, not even a handful, you can get to top three, that have shifted to the right, as the, regardless, compared to the rest of the country. So Tennessee is like, coming up on Wyoming soon, for crying out loud. So it shouldn't be a 9-point win. It just shouldn't. All right. So let's get back to what Robert said, because he's absolutely right.
And to recognize this system is broken and we're not doing as good. The Republican Party isn't doing the job it needs to at putting out the record, that people are not going to pay taxes on tips and overtime, and the miles making your food better, and the people aren't crossing the border. That messaging isn't getting out there beyond conservative media.
All right. Well, Byron, so Robert.
All right, there. So now that's like, there's the expert, but they're going to do that. So let me just it's getting, I'll be honest, it is getting a little annoying. And there's this nice guy on Twitter. I probably was a little bit harsh with. He's a good follower, and he's been nice. But the fact of the matter is, it is getting a little bit annoying for some of us who speak to Americans every day for a living to be told, yeah, I hear you, but bro, I'm not Quinnipiac over here. Okay. I'm not sure that there's anybody who's spoken to more Americans than 4 people in the last 3 to 5 months. And that would be because I know of the work they do, except for maybe David Shore on the left. I don't know how much more David has done. In the beginning of the Trump administration, that guy was conducting interviews, man, because they want to know what they lost. I think he did something like 100,000 interviews in like 2 or 3 months. It's a lot. Not himself, but obviously they're taking in the data. I don't know. I do know of a few people that are similar to me in that they still do talk to voters themselves. I talk to voters a lot myself, more than I think anybody. But I know for a fact that Robert, Mark, Matt over at Insider Advantage, myself, have spoken to a ridiculous number of voters just in the last 45 days. But I mean, in the last 3 to 5 months, it's been an obscene amount of interaction with voters and on different levels. So, to have Byron York come in yeah, I hear, but it's like, okay, Byron, what the hell would you know? It's like that shit weird dude, right, on X, mocking and laughing about the tweet that I put up that Epstein was a huge issue for why people did not vote in the off cycles in New Jersey, in Virginia, right, in Georgia. I'm only reading their responses. I'm only interacting with them personally. I'm only seeing the transcripts of their peer-to-peer texting campaigns, right? And then on top of that, interviewing voters for polling. What would I know? But you know better. It's not just a matter of, we got to get the economy better and the messaging's got to get better. There are some specific needs that are going to be needed to be addressed. In Tennessee, when they did hit the panic button, because they had to, if you go, it's like, I don't know where Cook gets this crap from, but if you actually speak to the Van Epps campaign, they'll tell you, and Republicans who are involved in it, that they had a major problem with Epstein. It's everywhere. So to pretend like it's not true is you're just wrong. And especially if you've not interviewed anybody, how the hell would you know? Of course it was. There's a whole entire group of young, otherwise would be right-leaning voters, 45 and below, who are so pissed about this Epstein thing. And it wasn't just that, but it was like how he handled Epstein, then bombing it, on behalf of Israel, then just getting lost, the agenda getting completely sidelined for one foreign affair after another. It was a really bad combination. It's like getting punched in the chin. Maybe you can eat that first one, but man, if they follow up with if you get hit with the jab and it's like square to the jaw, and it's like, it's going to stun you and you should wake up and put your guard up, and you can eat it. But man, if they follow up with the overhand right and then the left hook, chances are you're going down, right? And that's how those issues, starting with Epstein, played out to the Republican voter and how it depressed the Republican vote. All right, so let's get back to Byron. All right, I know Byron's going to have such a wonderful input here. which of course I'm being facetious.
The expert, he said there's more concern here. And I see what he's saying. I mean, obviously, Republicans always want to win by, double digits and huge. But Trump can't do it all himself, right? He can't carry the whole load of optimism along with Scott Bessent and his cabinet. The Republicans on the...
But he didn't say that. That's not what he said. And when I said it before, that's not even what I meant. I'm talking about Donald Trump can't do everything on his own. There was a commenter. I just saw the comment on the screen before. He was absolutely right. Like, whether you like it or not, Donald Trump's doing something every day. You may not agree with what he's doing, but he's acting. Republicans aren't doing shit. They haven't been doing shit. You have Randy Fine standing up 2 days in a row. On the first day, he stands up to call for a bill to put you in prison for 5 years if you criticize Israel. The next day, he stands up to demand we open an entirely new bureaucracy to monitor and police the European Union for anti-Semitism. And if they don't get it, what? Then we'll attack NATO? Like, then we'll go after NATO funding? Like, so you can't go after NATO funding, folks, because it's a stupid idea and you're robbing Americans of their money and you're allowing democratic socialists to pretend like they got the good life in Western Europe. It's not for any of those reasons, because the Warsaw Pact fell 2 decades ago and there's no point to have a balancing coalition against the Warsaw Pact because it doesn't exist anymore. Not for that reason, but because Europe isn't policing rising anti-Semitism. I mean, you got to be kidding me, guys. Like, the Republicans aren't doing anything.
Hill have to jump in and start talking about the promise of America under these new policies.
All true, but first we should say this was a really big win for Republicans because their margin of power in the House is so narrow. They're picking up another vote. That gives Mike Johnson a lot more room. I mean, it's that close and that tight. Losing it would.
Mickey Sherrill's out until in New Jersey.
But losing would have been just a disaster. Losing would have been a disaster. Also, there is, in the aftermath of this election, a debate inside the Democratic Party continuing about progressive candidates versus more moderate candidates. And there are many Democrats who are worried that Democratic primary electorates seem to pick the most progressive, the most radical. They picked a candidate who openly said she hated Nashville.
And now you know why. Thank you for watching Inside the Numbers. Like, seriously, right? Now you know why, because you watched Inside the Numbers. You know what's going on with the Democratic Party because you just saw the numbers, right? That is true. I would just add to what Byron said. I would just add this. There is a debate going on in the Democratic Party, but that is the simpler form of it, or understanding it. The real problem that Republicans have to be on the lookout for is that there is a faction, and he's a really nice guy. Ro Khanna is a really nice guy. I'm sure if you're a Trump voter, you don't agree with much of anything he said, but JD understands it, by the way. JD sees it. There is a faction with like Ro Khanna and AOC and others. She's going to moderate after these midterms, folks, like that. She's going to do an about face. They understand that they have to harness populism. And if Trump doesn't succeed, if MAGA doesn't succeed in speaking to these populist needs, that they're going to have a massive opportunity. So there's a group of Democrats, there's a faction in the party that does understand that it's populism whichever way. There's no alternate path. It's either going to be left-wing populism, which always turns into democide, or it'll be MAGA. But they're betting that MAGA fails here, that Trump fails, and they're going to be waiting with solutions and a whole slate of people. And they, unlike the one faction that Byron was just talking about that's worried, that they picked the most radical, and we can laugh that they picked somebody who said she hates Nashville, we can laugh at that. But that other group does understand that those are the people that are going to help them get elected. So yes, if you aren't paying attention to the problem and you're a Democrat, it's a problem. If you are paying attention to it, though, and you offer kind of like a middle of the road and you bump the corporate Democrat out, which is really a fascist, like a straight up fascist, if you bump them out, then you're going to take that lane. Plus, you'll be able to feed from the energized base that we just saw before, that which is obviously, I mean, the entire party is a socialist party. We just went over this. So like Ro Khanna and the rest of them, they understand you can have your cake and eat it too here if you do it right. And if MAGA fails, and they're right. All right. So let's get back to it. I know we're going over here.
She hated everything about Nashville. I mean, what more can you say to turn off the voters in an area? Nashville voted big for her, by the way, but she
margin-wise
in the region she lost badly. So the Democrats have some real problems, as evidenced by this. They had been spinning for weeks that a close defeat would be a big win for them. Well, no, it's not. It's a defeat. There are concerns for Republicans. There are plenty of concerns for Democrats, too.
And Robert, doesn't it come down to what Trump was talking about and Scott Bessent was talking about yesterday? The economy is moving in the right direction. Obviously, interest rates have to come down, and the president wants that to happen. That's been artificially hurting the economy. But if Bessent is right and the economy really takes off in the first half of next year, moving into the fall, that's really it. Isn't that going to be the bellwether for whether Republicans hold their majorities, or even perhaps, doesn't seem possible now, but perhaps increase their majorities? He's either right or wrong on what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, if you ask the average Republican, would you rather the economy be great, in the fall of 2025 or the fall of 2026, they would obviously say 2026. And you add an increasingly improving economy with interest rates that may at that point be falling, and maybe the home mortgage game's back going again. And it could be a really good mix. But the one thing the Republicans should take, and you were right, the president can't lift all this.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a better effort to put the message out there. Just waiting to dump a bunch of money in the last 6 weeks in a few specific states, congressional districts. That system is broken.
Yes.
I mean, we just got through with that Thanksgiving Day.
Yes.
3 football games that had incredible ratings. Where were the ads touting Republican accomplishments?
Where were
This
they?
is something that needs to be a year-round project. The Democrats have the entire mainstream media hitting 90% of the Republican electorate. And we cannot rely on just the president, just, the conservative media to do it. There's got to be some real work put into this.
God almighty. We can end it there because Manny just said it. We just went through Thanksgiving weekend. All of those games, the parades, massive ratings, nothing. That would have been a great time to explain to the American public why ICE wears masks, okay? Despite they have to hide their faces because they're doing God's work and keeping the border closed. And if they get seen, their child will be killed by a cartel member, or, make the case or take off the masks. But the border is closed. Immigration was a huge issue in 24. It was inflation and immigration and accountability. They say nothing about these things. I hate to say it, and I've got to end here, but I hate to say it. I finally read an article in The Atlantic that was actually accurate. And it was entitled, "Trump has never been more isolated than he is now." And it's true. You walk into the White House, you have Real America's Voice on one television, Fox News on another. They don't even have a messaging war room. They need a messaging war room. I'll tell you what, I don't think I even want the damn job, but there are people out there who can do it. They're in a bubble. That's it. They're in a bubble. There's no MSNBC for Laura and I, at least 1 to 3 hours a day. We are exposed to every single screen with every single source of information on it. It's one of the reasons why when we heard in the polling about Epstein, I knew it was real, because it was on MSNBC 24/7. Right, Laura? 24/7. And if you go into the Trump White House, you're just not going to see that. They're not watching CNN. They're not watching MSNBC. They have no idea what their enemy is saying or doing. And look, I don't understand why the effort doesn't meet the threat. Like Robert just said, like this needs to be a much, much bigger effort. Like, to hell with your stupid cocktail parties and your dumb little like gatherings where you pat each other on the ass and say, wow, you're so smart. No, you're so smart. No, you're so smart. Guess what? We're all getting awards. We're all so smart. Like, that shit doesn't work anymore. They're going to put people in jail if they win. Pete Hegseth is going to be impeached. Pam Bondi is going to be removed. Kristi Noem is going to be removed. RFK, oh my God. And once they weaken and demoralize you guys by removing some of Trump's best people, and Pete will be target number one, then they'll go after him. That is their plan. And the danger of this, the severity of the danger should be met with an appropriate response. Instead, we're talking about Candace getting wrong flight times and not knowing the difference between Fort Riley and Camp Ripley. And it's a joke. It's a joke. And then they think they can parachute in the last 6 weeks, like Robert said, and just fix it. That's a Trump plus 22 district. That's how you were able to save it by 9 points. Most of the other targeted districts that will be up in the House alone cannot take 11-point swings. And that was one of the more favorable swings that we have seen in this off-cycle year from specials or flat out regularly scheduled off-cycle elections. That is several points less than the average swing we've seen so far. Those districts cannot take even 11. Some Senate seats can't take 11. Especially since 2 of them are in prime states that look so Republican because of Donald Trump. Not because they are. Iowa is getting significantly more Republican. It just is as far as registrations go. But 3 out of the 4 Iowa congressional districts in 2018 went Democratic. Yeah, there's nobody there, right? He's just barking. It's a good watchdog, but sometimes he barks for no damn reason. All right. Link to the public polling project is below. I haven't really been pushing it with you guys because it's the holidays, but contribute and share if you can. Well, share, period. Contribute if you can. That would be great. It's a lot going out. I was piggybacking off of some stuff before to try to make it, easier. We're on our own here now, so that's the reality of the situation. And then what else? Right. We'll do the primary stuff. It's going to be cool. And we'll do the belief in, well, there's 4 questions we ask about the extraterrestrial issue, which is views on UFO sightings, belief in intelligent life in the universe, and whether or not the U.S. government has knowledge that they are not sharing. All right. So again, be interesting. I got to go back. That we just went over 18, 22, and 23. And I think we might have missed 2024. I'll go back and I'll go look, but I think we missed 2024. Ohio, Evan, is one of the ones that if it's a very bad environment for Republicans, they could get cooked. It's a very strong Democratic candidate. He's been elected to statewide office there multiple times. The Republican candidate is not really in the Vance mold at all. Bernie Moreno wasn't really either, but he did an incredible job. First of all, I really like Bernie's a really nice guy. And there was some things that he was attacked for in another election. And I thought they were just gross and unfair. Some people, when they're conversions, they're like legitimate conversions to MAGA. Like JD Vance is one of those people, by the way. He wasn't a Trumper from the beginning. But when you have a real conversion, you see it. It's like you've been, you took the pill from Morpheus, man. And now you're never going to unknow. You're never going to unsee it. So you become like MAGA better than some people who claim to have been MAGA for a while or longer, right? So Bernie was able to, because that was authentic. Now, so his shift from Bernie 1.0 to Bernie 2.0 was authentic, so it worked. So same thing with Vance, although Vance was just the perfect candidate. So even in a bad year up against an incredibly strong Democrat, JD Vance still kicked the shit out of him. And that's not coming this year with Husted. Husted is not a MAGA Republican. So look, if it's an average equilibrium kind of cycle, then that's the one thing Republicans have on their side, is that the Senate has more resistance. The map is favorable, but also the partisan voting index, it has more resistance. The swings in the mood, the House is volatile. You know, you can get like Tennessee 5 or Kentucky 5 or something. Can all of a sudden you have somebody like Amy running on the Democratic ticket. You can have somebody like all of a sudden in a very close election. But yeah, Ohio's tough. And you guys got to remember this. I'll say this last about the Senate for people who are joking and don't realize because they don't know better. You can't just have, like a tie-breaking Senate. You can't, because Lisa Murkowski, I've been told by numerous people multiple times now, Lisa Murkowski, if she gets the opportunity to take the action that will flip control to Democrats, she absolutely intends on doing it. And that is, if Lisa Murkowski can, she will leave the Republican Party, pretend she's an independent like Agnes King, and caucus with Democrats. So she intends to screw Donald Trump one more time, and she's dying to do it. She knows she can't win in the future anymore. She did everything she possibly could. There was the write-in candidate against Joe Miller after she lost that primary. And in order to beat Erica, she had to change the entire political system. Which is just insane with ranked choice voting. She sent her operatives from Washington to get that done in Anchorage. They got it done. They came back. So she's almost got nothing to lose now, but she will do it if it counts. She's not going to do it to bring the seat majority from 52 to 51. She'll just stay as a Republican because it will accomplish her nothing. But if she can do it, it's her way in to 25% of the Democratic vote moving forward from now on in Alaska. And she will. And actually, it'll probably be more, because eventually Democrats will just stop running candidates. And it's incredible to think, but Alaska, so incredibly important for energy, and long-time Republican red state being run by a de facto Democrat. It's just going to be insane. North Carolina, Evan, I have one more trick up my sleeve. I'm trying. But I'm telling you right now, Whatley is not a good candidate. He's just not. And he's a nice guy. Not sure. I know he's a nice guy. But he is not a good candidate. He's just not. There is one person, if Laura isn't going to do it, which she's not. And that's why Trump was like, Mike, you got to run. He was like, all right. He didn't even want to run. And it shows. There's one person that can run. Maybe even this person was to get in, and Michael would be like, you know what? I didn't even want to do this. I'm going back to the RNC. That would be the ideal situation, and just let her cook. Let her cook. Because right now, you're not beating Roy Cooper. And I just don't know. I know it's early, but he's just not a good candidate. All right. Merry Christmas and to all you guys. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all you guys too. If some of you are going away. Hey, Peppers, wonderful holiday season as well. Hopefully I see you guys back here soon. But again, yeah, it's 3:25. I got to go pick up my little one. So I'm going to have to get going. But again, share the links, contribute if you can, do what you can. And we'll see you guys. I'll share some, especially locals. I'll share, as soon as we have some early data, you know me, you know what I do. We'll peek at it once it's representative. We'll peek at it, and I'll give you an idea about what we're finding. All right, none but love for you guys. Have a great rest of your Friday, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend if I don't talk to you before then. All right, guys, be good. Go spend some time with your families, too. It's Christmas.